you start, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No. What I meant is before you start, would you be asking me these questions and then I enter
Yes,
into the
yes,
presentation?
yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
let's go.
All right. So, first, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the World Space Week speaker series brought to you by Mission Shakti Sat and Mentormind. It's wonderful to see many of you joining us from different parts of the world and to celebrate how space exploration continues to inspire innovation and collaboration here on Earth. So today we are absolutely thrilled, and personally I'm very excited to listen to our very distinguished guest Tanushri Joshi, a space and technology lawyer and a business development and strategy consultant. And I have to tell you, Tanushri, that there are some students in Dubai who have taken the permission from their school to to attend your session today because you're all aspiring to be lawyers, and this is something that really excites them about space law. So we have a lot of very excited people today, including me, as I said, who would like to listen to you today. So thank you for joining us. Tanushri has worked with pioneering companies developing launch vehicles and satellites in India and played a key role in enabling India's first private rocket launch and the country's first private hosted payload mission. Beyond her industry leadership, she also contributes actively to academia and serves as a member of the International Institute of Space Law's Working Group on Light Pollution of the Night Sky from a space law perspective. So, Tanushree, that's absolutely fascinating, and it's really a true privilege to have you us today. And so, please welcome once again to the World Space Week Speaker Series. So, before I start off with the questions, is there anything that you would like to share about your background to and sort of introduce yourself to the guests?
So, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me. I think it's very exciting to be a part of this wonderful initiative that you guys have taken, especially about, the space law and everything related to space that we discuss through and through with other industry members. But it's very rare that we have an honest and open discussion with students who are in a very I would say in still their pivotal years of education, such as higher secondary or so on. So I think having a chat with them will also help me understand how much I know of space law and how much I can simplify it. So I think thanks a lot for this great initiative, and you've already introduced me very well. So I don't think there's anything else to add to that. What I would just like to know is if we can begin the session. So we're also open to any queries or questions that we have from the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is that why is it necessary to have space law? And then what is the scope? Like, what are the areas related to space activities where law is becoming increasingly important?
So if you take a look at law, it's a set of rules, regulations, policies, and this is like a framework that's there in place to ensure that your rights are protected. In case they are breached, you have a way to look forward to ensure that you get your own damages, that the loss that you incur, you're able to, sort of receive damages for it. Similarly, so outer space is nothing but an extension to another set of exploration. As humans, we are done with exploring on Earth, may it be land, water, or even airspace. Now we're exploring outer space, which is also known as common heritage of mankind. And it's called as the ownership lies or rests with everyone. No individual, no country can claim their own ownership on any aspect of the outer space except for their own, perhaps the satellite or launch vehicle or space object. So these set of rules, regulations are very important to ensure nobody violates your rights and nor you violate anybody's rights. So, like you have uh, rules for aviation, like you have rules for your aircrafts, extending the same principle ahead, or say, suppose for your cars on your road, extending the same principle ahead, we have rules for exploring outer space as well.
So, is there any particular areas on which space law, at least at this time, however much is developed, are there any particular areas on what it focuses on?
So, space law consists of two, I mean, it can be bifurcated in international space law and what is your national space law. So, like I mentioned, space law is a branch of your general international law, focusing on everything and anything related to space. So the UN actually has an office of outer space affairs, which deals into all of this and had come up way earlier. I'm talking about the time after these discussions started after World Wars and the
Oh,
Cold War. Yeah,
okay.
it's as old as that. However, we're not aware of it. Uh, so space law, in fact, is also pretty old. They came up with certain principles, like the way you have a constitution for every country, for every, I mean, every sovereign nation has its own constitution. Similarly, there's something called as the Outer Space Treaty, which is known as the Magna Carta, which means the essential document to refer to whenever it comes to space law. So it sets a certain principles as to what happens when you're trying to launch. How can you use outer space? How can you explore outer space? Are there any restrictions on exploring outer space? Who, in case if you harm someone, who is liable? And how do you ensure that that harm that you cause is sort of in a way that you get solutions to it. Um, then you also have we are most interested in anything and everything about moon and exploration regarding it. Can somebody own moon? What happens to the resources in outer space? It can be a small asteroid to the moon or any other planet as well. So it sets some sort of guidelines, and I'll be more than happy to speak it through the presentation. So yeah.
One question that, since you're talking about, there is international law, and which is obviously done by the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, and also each country has its own law. So is it possible that, I wanted to first know, so if I were a country and if I wanted to work as a lawyer in this sector and creating, being a part of the policy for space law in my country, um, do I have to, obviously I'm expecting that the law has to be done keep in alignment with the international law that is there. Obviously
Mhm.
you cannot have areas of conflict out there, but would it be possible, or are there, and is there any country where, or do you think it's viable if a country particularly does not have its own law but it just follows the international law? So can you still sort of take part in space activities just following the international law when you do not have your own country's law for this?
Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Hmm.
Um, However, it is always encouraged to also have those international principles translated into your national space law. So, like India, for example, until a couple of years ago, we did not even have a policy particularly for exploration of outer space. While there
Okay.
may be on different aspects such as satellite communication, I mean the use of radio frequencies, it may be your yeah, radio frequencies. Then you also have for remote sensing, you have policies regarding these aspects within space activities. However, there was nothing in terms of what happens for a private launch vehicle, a private spacecraft. And if you see, India's had a very interesting space journey ever since its beginning. So we did not have a particular national law in place. We still do not have an act in place. So it's totally okay to not have national law, but It's always encouraged to translate. So now we are awaiting the Space Act. In
Right.
fact, the UAE actually passed in, I think, 2019. There's a federal law that was initiated by the UAE Space Agency, and I believe that um, it's called as the regulation of the space sector. So even UAE does have its law and encourages a lot of activities that we see that are upcoming in the coming years. So
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm looking at your slide and I'm looking at this very interesting questions. Who owns outer space? Who owns the moon? What about the junk? So would you please share your ideas about this?
yeah, like I said, outer space is vast, and we believe that we're not aware of the activities that go about. Um, like I said, outer space has no boundaries, but it has rules, and it must, because nobody should be able to misuse it. If you just go to the previous slide, um, yeah, okay, the one after.
Okay, sorry.
And
Yeah.
even after, yeah. So
Okay.
we are, it's very the one before, just the background.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So it's more important for us to know why we had space law in the first place. Like I mentioned, we were done with two world wars, and we were on the verge of having another war. There was Cold War essentially existing between US and the USSR, and the issue that happened was, if we've already done so much on Earth, are we going to replicate or mirror the same kind of activities, which can be harmful, in outer space as well? So, to ensure that we do not sort of misuse, that we do not use outer space as another area or region for war, um, all the countries sort of came together. The UN COPUS, which is it's sort of your okay, the UNOSA, in fact, the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, came up with five uh, conventions, treaties, and agreements, out of which the fifth one is regarding moon. We will take a closer look at it, but there were some experiments that were being conducted. There's also something called as Project Needles. You can take a look at it on Google. The idea was that you place small needle-like objects, which creates a magnetic field around the Earth, to test or experiment its implications, or understanding the effects of it. However, there is an body, an international body that sits for your astronomy purposes. It's called as the IAU. They were concerned about the effects of all of this, and hence they pushed a lot to ensure that such harmful experiments are not carried out just for the reasons of scientific research as well. So, to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
So, we talk about space laws and so on. But before we move on there, it's very important for us to know that we're so highly dependent on space or technology that is developed because of space, that we're not even aware of it. Say this conversation that we are having live, thanks to the satellite technology, thanks to the ATM, the GPS that we are so highly reliant on. I don't think we move anywhere without a GPS anymore.
No, not
So
at all.
so that then the weather forecasting, the camera lenses, the pixel or the zoom capabilities was actually for astronomy purposes. Even MRI for that matter. Then we also have television and broadcasting and mobile phones and so on. So
In
definitely
fact, I was
research.
reading,
Yeah.
we had a conversation with Kinjal Dave. I think you know Kinjal Dave, yes. And in her talk, she was talking about how even the serums, the face creams, the dry shampoo that we use, everything comes from that space technology or the space research that has gone into it, because that's what the astronauts use most of the time, or the the effect of zero gravity on our screen and everything. So I was like absolutely fascinated to know that space is everywhere. It's
Yeah.
everywhere, and we are not even aware of it.
Right. So in fact, even the tang powder that we get,
Hmm.
the crystallization of this was actually for space exploration related food. I mean, it came as a byproduct of the research.
That's it.
So
Okay.
we're that's what happens. You know, we're surrounded with aspects that are available to us because of space exploration
Space.
or research related to space exploration, but we're not aware of it. So what happens is, like I said, it leads to a lot of innovation. Um, that innovation leads to industrialization, and that industrialization leads us to a strong pillar of economy. So space is not just left with national governments anymore. There are a lot of private entities taking part globally. Um, that is, you know, every nation has their own private industry that's upcoming. That leads
True.
to contribution in terms of your GDP. It leads to creation of jobs. It leads to teaching. It leads to so many more activities. So space is not solely looked from a research perspective, but it's taken a important role in contributing to the economy. So
Right.
if we are so dependent on space law, why not create? I mean, on space, why not create space law? So
Yes.
although distant galaxies and similar laws, the question that we have is if everyone is carrying their own experiments, if every nation is carrying their own experiments, do we still need a common law to sort of bind us together? Um, the next slide, please. So we need a common law to ensure that not everybody's thinking on a different page. Our basics, like we have basic sense of morality or certain legal principles that you should not murder someone, that you should not, I mean, there should not be any fraud in terms of either your business, trade, or whatsoever. Um, you cannot unnecessarily harm another individual. We have principles against hijacking that are globally agreed upon. Similarly, there needs to be a common set of understanding when it comes to exploration of outer space and use of the same. Um, so the current framework, like I mentioned earlier, is in two folds. One is at the international level, and second is at the national level. So we have five treaties or conventions. The first is the Outer Space Treaty, which is uh, the most important document in space law. Then we have the Rescue and Return Agreement. So we all know about, and we are very interested in astronauts and how they explore outer space. And in the coming past few months and years, we've seen even individuals not from the space industry taking a suborbital flight, going up to 100 kilometers and returning back. So the question also is, are they or can they be termed as astronauts? What happens if, I mean, if the launch is happening from US and these sort of crash into water, say near Australia or in Australia? uh, how do you return the space object, and how do you assist in terms of the rescue of these astronauts? So simple principles I give you, or I my object or my order is uh, for some reason delivered, instead of getting delivered to my house, gets delivered to yours. So because of certain good principles, you have the duty to sort of return it back to me, to be honest that you have received my parcel. In the same sense, this is also applied for astronauts and for space objects. Then you have the liability convention on saying who's responsible and liable for breach, or if you cause harm. Then we have the registration agreement, like your ships, like your car has a registration number, so does every space object. This needs to be registered with the UN USA. Then we have the Moon Agreement, which is the most interesting agreement. It talks that nobody can own Moon, that nobody can even own its resources. It's a tricky part in the current international legal framework, but this agreement was there back in 1979. And then we again have national laws. So every nation has their own laws, which translates all of these five principles. In addition to that, they may also have different clauses or rules to assist their own space missions. So, this is how current international framework is concerning space law.
Thank you. I have a question out here. So I'm going back to the example that you gave. So there were, there are a lot of these suborbital flights. You go 100 kilometers. So as you said, it might go up from the US, and so it falls in the ocean in Australia. But let's say, if Australia was for not some reason was not a part, had not signed any of these treaties and didn't have, would it still be binding on Australia to, the rescue and return agreement, the liability? Would they still have to follow that?
So it's a very interesting question. Generally, treaties, conventions, agreements, I mean, when it comes to international law, they only apply when you sign it, when you ratify it, when essentially when you agree to be a part of it. But these sort of agreements, if there is, like in a country, if there is a majority view taken on it, or if it is a general custom that is practiced, um, so customs also are a part of international law. Not necessary that it's only an agreement. This is again basics of your general international law. So customs, if they're practiced globally for years together, which can be accepted. So there are certain specifications that need to be like boxes that need to be ticked off for it to be a customary international law. If that happens, then yes, Australia has a duty, or any country that is not essentially a part of the agreement, it has a moral duty sort of to return the space object, or to assist in the rescue of astronauts and helping them go back to to their original country, or from wherever they have been launched, like the launching state. And we're generally known as envoys of mankind. So I mean, it's everybody's trying to research, and this research is generally shared. So whenever it comes to space law, international coordination, international cooperation are the basics, or a basic policy that is underlining every space mission. So it's well understood because all these activities are very high risk. They need a lot of money, so they're capital intensive. And although outer space related activities are very competitive, you see there's ESA doing something, there's NASA doing something, there's ISRO, there's China. Everybody's onto their own missions. But there is a line there which also includes international cooperation and coordination. And we all know that without these two principles, we will not be able to further our research or our exploration. So I hope this answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does. And it actually answers another question that I did have about, having a national law, or do they have to follow only the international law? So you've been sort of talking about it. So before I go to the other question, the other slides, so I wanted to know, so since there's so many different parts, um, related to international law for the outer space affairs. So, and at the same time, I was quite surprised to know that it started right from the Cold War itself. So that's been and sir, the Outer Space Affair Treaty, it's quite a few years that it's done. So, given this kind of timeline that's been there from the 1960s to now, um, is there a, can you give us a very short overview of which aspects of space law do we have some robust policies already in place? And if for someone was trying to, I'm talking now in terms of students who might be interested in these, in these careers. So, which are the areas in space law which are already robust now? The policies are in place and it's well thought out. And are there any areas which are emerging? in terms of space law, because it's a very dynamic field. A lot of things are happening. So, can you give us an overview of that? What's already very robust and what's emerging in terms of space law?
So I think space law in itself is very emerging. Let's understand that law, whenever it comes to as compared to your civil and criminal proceedings or uh, civil or criminal nature of activities, they're simple because we know for years together we've understood um, to what level a human mind can think of. So we've already noted all of that down. Whenever there are laws surrounding technology, they need to evolve and adapt themselves according to the changing technology. So earlier, when Outer Space Treaty was created, there was a provision for. It does not explicitly talk about private entities. However, it talks about non-governmental entities. Earlier, it was space activities were only carried out by national governments. The scope of privatization was not permitted. uh, from the early 2000s, a few countries started letting private entities enter into the market to own rockets, to own satellites, to own research out of their own missions. Um, so that's a particular change. In terms of the robust policies that we currently have, what is already very clear and set is that there has to be freedom of exploration and use. These are some principles, like you can see it on the screen, that you cannot own, like you cannot claim your sovereignty or ownership or use and you cannot claim any of these rights either through occupation or declaration. This is essentially because colonization, before two world wars, for years together a lot of countries were colonized. So to ensure the same does not happen in outer space, we have this principle. Utilizing it for peaceful purposes is the next most important principle. So, in terms of space law, these set of principles are something that are common. What evolves is the use cases, the upcoming technology. We did not have technology to sort of remove space debris from outer space. We did not have technology where refueling can be done in space. We also did not have a lot of tech in terms of asteroid mining. That is very much in the talks now. So all of these are going on the Mars. Moon was, of course, something that was being explored. But what happens when you want to set up your own space station? A lot of countries, a lot of geographies are coming up with their own space station. So exploring that is again a different aspects as to who owns what. So for people interested in space law, don't consider space law as a very different aspect of law. A lot of it is interconnected, like international law, like your intellectual property, like your general contracts, because every of this mission, there's a contract that's signed, there's an agreement between the government and the government, or government and private entities, or just the private entities. So your basics of law have to be clear. In addition to that, you should know international law, and of course, you need to start reading space law. Kanchi, you're on mute. Yeah.
Now, so yeah, so I wanted to ask you another question about this. Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. So when you have, this one is about, I would say, as you said, that we didn't have technology for, or we didn't think of going to Mars. We didn't have technology for debris, and so as the technology is moving, as we are thinking about how it's evolving, the laws are also going to evolve. So that's happening. But what about this traffic which has already been created due to all the exploration? So how are what is the kind of legal aspect that's related to it? Can I just send my satellites out there, or is there a law in terms of how I'm going to do it? Or am I going to retrieve it back? In terms of junk, what does the law say?
Right. So again, this is going to be in two folds. One is at an international level, one is at a national level. What we realized is space is becoming more accessible as it should be for all. However, when there are too many space objects, by space objects, I mean anything that we launch from Earth to space. So, whenever you have a lot of them, the issue that happens is traffic. Like we have a lot of cars on road that creates traffic congestion. We've also seen that with the airspace, where if you're trying to land your aircraft, at times you have to circle around because there's no space to sort of land and park your aircraft. So congestion on land, congestion in air, and there's a similar congestion that we may see in outer space. We're so heavily reliant on satellite technology for communication and so on. We cannot let another satellite come and crash into these important satellites. So, of course, taking all of this into consideration, the UN is sort of formulating laws, rules, and regulations around it. A couple of years ago, they came up with long term sustainability guidelines, which issues how we can use space, how we can explore space to ensure that it is more sustainable uh, by its own nature, and secondly that it can also be explored by generations to come, and we do not exhaust it right away. This is translated into national laws. A lot of countries are now adopting the principle of deorbiting your space object within 5 years after the completion of its mission. Earlier, it was 25 years. There's a lot of grants, fundings given for missions to sort of refuel in outer space so that you don't have to get your spacecraft back, launch again. Um, there are also ways in which a single spacecraft can host different payloads, um, conduct experiments. I mean, if there's a very small, say, there's a chip that you want to see how it works in outer space, instead of launching a whole spacecraft for that, what you do is like you have carpooling, you also have satellite pooling, which is called as hosted payload. So these are the same principles. So human mind has adopted these principles and
Tanushri, we have lost you, I think so. Tanushri, we can't hear you.
yeah, my bad. I think I had some network issues.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. So I said the human mind has certain limitations. So we mirror our activities. In the same way, this is also done for space. So yes, we have guidelines in terms of deorbiting spacecraft. You also agree to not create space debris. There are ways, like the way you have maps, you can understand or track vehicles. In the same way, you can also track space objects. So you, before your launch, you see in that particular pathway of yours if there are space objects that can be hurt. Because unlike on Earth, space, the impact is a little more higher as compared to what happens in or within the Earth's atmosphere. So creation of a small debris, even if it's a minor particle like this, if it hits your space object, it can create a lot of mess in outer space.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and you have all your regulators with all their ears up whenever you plan for a mission. So they ask you to declare what kind of material you're using for your spacecraft, um, and they encourage that it burns up if it's trying to re-enter, so that there are no particles left.
Right.
Otherwise, we've seen a lot of cases of space debris falling onto other countries or oceans or so on. So
Right.
yeah.
If this is about, as you said, about the traffic and the space debris, is there any other kind of reasons for which the law, or the nations are taking initiatives to protect outer space? And if yes, then what are these steps? One is the traffic, and we talked about some of the different contracts that are there, the different conventions that are there. So apart from these, are there any other initiatives that nations are taking to protect outer space?
So there are lots and lots of initiatives that are being taken currently. Let's talk about AI. Artificial intelligence has also reached outer space. So you have working groups focusing on research aspects related to space law, how artificial intelligence, in terms of your space exploration activities, or even in outer space, who is responsible for what? That's also a question. Secondly, we come up to IPR, that are your intellectual property rights. Currently, the way we have it on Earth is every nation has its own set of regime. We also have the World Intellectual Property Office, WIPO, which sort of gives you a way to patent, to register your designs, and I mean there are so many aspects in terms of you being able to register your intellectual property in 5 different countries at once. Now, what happens if this is off Earth, this is beyond Earth? Who owns these innovations? So there are research for that. Next, what we come up to is resource. There is asteroid mining. There is also mining on, there are moon particles that recently even China had, um, I think this was in 2023. China had got, 24 or 23, China had got some small resources that were mined. They put in a nice, cute box. So you could see that as well. So if this is being explored by everyone, who owns these resources? If ownership of outer space is not allowed, are we allowed to mine and then claim ownership on the resource that's extracted? Is also the question. So these are all very interesting questions that pop up. But most important question is, where does outer space begin? That's a question that we still do not have a answer to. Uh, Generally, it's considered from 100 kilometers above Earth's, I mean, from Earth up to 100 kilometers is your airspace. Beyond 100 kilometers is your outer space. However, there are differences and there's a lack of global consensus. So, this again being a part of international law, global consensus is very important. So, we have a lot of questions to answer.
So if you're talking about the fact that we do not have a global consensus on some things like this, what other disputes are there related to space activities and the law?
So there have been disputes in terms of radio frequencies, allocation of radio frequency, because how else do we communicate, right? We won't be able to meet the satellite or space object in person. So my only way is to communicate through radio frequencies. So there has been differences in terms of opinions as to which region gets what, but it's been managed wonderfully by International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, which essentially sits out of Geneva and has fairly worked well throughout these years in ensuring fair rights. Uh, Most of these disputes that are there are contractual level. Say, I promise you that this satellite will be launched and will operate for 10 years. However, within a year, it stops operating. So it's a promise that you did not fulfill. Um, and I have paid you for all of it. So it's more on these contractual aspects that you have disputes as of now. Moving forward, I don't know. I think we may have more disputes as to what happens in space. So we are also trying to establish, going to your general courts may not be the solution. So we are trying, globally, there is an initiative to sort of move this to arbitration, to bring in the sector related experts, in ensuring that you're able to resolve your disputes at a quicker level as compared to other disputes. So, mainly contractual as of now, but
So
we don't know
if
what's
you
ahead for us.
So when we look at, each country has its own law codes, and then we have the international, court of justice. So when we have two countries, let's say, and the two countries do not agree on something, or there has been a lapse in the contract, whatever you are expected to do. So is it United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, or like you said, you had the ITU for technological things? Is there any one body which would come and sort of arbitrate, where one body that would be the place where two countries would go, and they would probably listen to the two countries and deliver their verdict? Is there something like that?
So, like you have mentioned, it is an international dispute. If it's between two or more countries, what generally happens is, of course, the international court has its jurisdiction, and any country can go. What happens is, even if it's a private entity, it's the government that has to take initiative against starting these proceedings against the other company or the country. And now, generally, to ensure that that disputes are resolved and do not prolong for a while, because this is a very capital intensive industry. Engineering takes time, research takes time. So to ensure that you get your solution to it, countries agree in their agreement or in their contract. That is where a space lawyer comes in to ensure that your agreement is legally sound, that in case of some um, risk that we identify, there is a possible solution to it. So at times, countries also agree to courts, to local courts in a particular country, say, suppose for US or France or India or anywhere. In terms of arbitration as well, it's clearly laid out as to who does what. Um, if a dispute happens, I can either go to Singapore for it being a neutral jurisdiction. If the contract is say between India and France, uh, so it's up to parties on the way that they want to resolve it. If not, of course, the international court has its jurisdiction, in the sense the power to hear your issue.
So, as you
So
just said, that this is what space lawyers do, that when they frame these policies, when they're chalking up these policies, it's a very, very sound contract. Is there, and I'm looking at your next slide, is there anything else that a space lawyer would do? It would be, these are like, if you had a job description of a space lawyer, a very generic job description, what would it have? What would it look at?
So, a job description has to be that you have to be a law graduate. In the sense, it's very important. I mean, I would want to emphasize on knowing your every other subject of law well, because as more as you get into space law, you understand how many principles are actually borrowed from other laws. It can be maritime, it can be aviation, um, it can also be your other civil disputes. Secondly, if you're not able to read contracts well, you would not understand what is the exploration agreement, or where do parties want to coordinate. So that is the very basics. Secondly, it's knowing about space law. So you have a set of international guidelines already. Along with that, knowing the national laws. So a thorough understanding of international and national space laws. Of course, you have to keep reading new laws as they come up, as they come through. Uh, Along with that, you also need to know, or you need to sort of have an understanding in how to communicate all of this with other team members. Uh, from a lawyer's perspective, whenever you're practicing in judiciary, you have uh, other lawyers that you need to talk to. So you have that legal jargon that you continuously talk, or a code language is what have been referred to as, that goes on between two lawyers. So you have to get away with all of it, not completely, but to a certain extent that your audience knows. These are basics. So of drafting, of knowing how to write agreements, how to speak, how to negotiate from a price perspective. But apart from that, there's a lot of work. So it also goes internally in terms of helping the company undertake projects, helping them understand what international, if a company comes and says, I want to launch my space object, I will have to see what is the kind of experiment, whether that experiment is permitted or not. If not, what are the other ways in which they can pivot or tweak their experiment that fits in the international standards. Um, and you also, if it's a new country, I mean, if not a new country, if it's a country that's entering into space exploration or still does not have space law, then of course you also need to talk to ministries about it, help them understand what the industry is up to, how the policy can enable further growth of the nation. So these are all very interesting aspects. You get to ensure that all your missions are compliant with space law. You need to also coordinate on radio frequency to ensure you are not utilizing or misutilizing somebody else's assigned radio frequency. Uh, so there's a lot, and it's a lot fun because you actually work on technology that is going to be out of, well, I mean, out of this world. So where else do you get such interesting tech to work on?
So I have two questions related to this. So
Mhm.
I'm looking at your slide, and if I see the word engineering, or even if I'm looking at medicine or AI, these are big umbrella careers. And under that, you might have a mechanical engineer, materials engineer, electrical engineer, computer engineer. So even in medicine, you would have cardiologist, gynecologist, all of that. So if someone wanted to be a space lawyer, are there any kind of specifics like that you could specialize that under space law? I can specialize in this or I can specialize in that. So that's my first question that I had. And the second is, since we are talking about space is a lot to do with engineering and AI. How much of an understanding of engineering principles, basic engineering principles, or technology for any that matter, does a person need to have for being a space lawyer?
So very interesting questions. The second question is something that I very much relate to and have experienced. For the first one, like you said, engineering is the broad aspect. Then you have mechanical, you have computer, and you have so on and so forth. So is law. Law is the broader umbrella. Under that, you have uh, arbitration, you have national laws. It can be civil, it can be criminal nature. You have intellectual property, you have AI. And now, space law, consider it as a new domain of exploration. As I said, we're done with land. Countries explored, I mean, countries from where all came in, colonized, explored, went back. So we were done with exploration on land. We were done colonizing. I mean, there was an aspect of claiming territory on in terms of water or claiming your jurisdiction. Even with air, we have sovereignty above, say, 100 kilometers. So all of this, we were done exploring. These are the three domains that humans have exhausted. The last is space. So when we talk about space law or space lawyer, uh, again, these are mission specific. Um, it's still in the nascent stages of privatization. So as the privatization grows, maybe in a couple of years, in 10 years or so, you'll have specialists in space law as well. Some of them who are very well in terms of radio frequency, some of them who are very good in terms of driving your space missions in the sense of getting licenses, approvals for all your missions. Some of them can be in terms of experts in AI domain. So there are different domains that are there on Earth that can be uh, mirrored in space. So you have domain experts within space law. So that's how it can be understood.
So, and in terms of if someone wanted to study space law, right? So we can obviously have study law and we specialize in criminal law, this and all of that. So if we wanted to do in space law, if someone wants a career in space law and policy, we've shared some of the things that a student can do to engage. But if you could elaborate for our students who might be interested in it, that how do they prepare for it, for a career in space law? What kind of skills are we looking at? A little bit of the things you did say, but if there's anything else that you would like, and are there any universities, any countries, or anything that is a that offers some fantastic courses for studying space law?
So, before we move on to this question, I would like to answer the second question that you had in terms of engineering and law. I was always intrigued by space exploration, as almost every kid is, and this dream remained for quite a long time. However, after at certain higher grades, I realized that engineering is not that fun. I did not want to give exams, and I've cried over maths at times. So I decided to give up on my dream, and I'm back to it, but from a space lawyer perspective. So, of course, yes, if I have to govern or if I have to be compliant with certain tech, I need to know what that technology is. I was lucky enough to get colleagues engineers who were able to simplify technology for me. So, yes, there was a lot of understanding, basic understanding on how the tech works, and you will have to work on that. Radio frequency is more technical than anything. So, you need to sort of sit and let it sort of chew on your brains. But that's what helps you become a domain expert. Um, Coming to, if you really want to be a space lawyer, there are no restrictions in how you can be one. Uh, if you have a law degree, then of course you can either join a company directly. I have myself never done a masters in space law or any course on space law as such. I had the chance of working on very interesting projects early on in terms of research and so on. So a way to do is do your bachelor's in law and then go to. There are a lot of international universities that offer space law courses. There is one in Leiden. There's an institute in McGill. There is the International Institute of Space Law. A lot of there's Tufts University. There are too many of them. There's Adelaide School of Law. There's Nalsar in India, and there are so many new colleges. So, of course, doing your masters and then coming to the industry is one way to it. Second, like I said, is to self research, uh, learn, keep reading, and interact with members. What you can do is be a part of very cool groups. There's something called as SGAC, that is the Student Generation Advisory Council. So interaction, communicating with members of the space sector, but maybe from different domains, will help you get a better clarity. And I also push a lot of engineers into space policy because of the technical nature of the topic. So, if they are able to communicate their ideas well, I think space engineers will be the domain experts in terms of policy as well. Another important part is you can also switch or you can pivot to, if not for space law, to space policy very easily, regardless of the earlier profession that you're practicing. So, it's to be relevant to keep your knowledge or awareness about what's happening new in the outer space related aspects. Uh, be a part of research groups or organizations. And I'll be happy to share links to where you can read about space law or these groups as well. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. And I have one last question for you, which is very interesting. So, you serve as a member of the International Institute of Space Law's working group on light pollution of the night sky from a space law perspective. So, can you say something more about this role that you have and what it entails?
So I am now a member of the International Institute of Space Law. I haven't announced it anywhere yet. This is the platform that I'm announcing it on. So, but years ago, when I was not a member of the International Institute of Space Law, I had a chance to be a member of this working group. What happened is, like we have the issue of AI in space back then, through discussions, UNOSA realized that there are aspects, there is light pollution happening, there's too much reflection that we have that may spoil or have harmful effects on life on Earth, or it can also cause issues in terms of exploration in outer space. So, a lot of us, the members of the working group, got together. We identified what the core issue is, uh, because light pollution causes a lot of problem in terms of uh, astronomy. It doesn't sort of hinders your view to viewing space object or stars. At the same time, if this light is reflected beyond a certain level, it creates or causes problems not only for humans but also for animals in terms of their life cycle, or in terms of them moving from one place to another on Earth. So this was mainly what the research was about. What I worked as, I worked on a particular topic amongst all of it. There is one article which talks about not causing harmful contamination. I focused, so my research was more on that. But the working group as such explored and came up with a report that was published in the UN, uh, of how it's important that we need to keep the dark skies quiet, and ensure that there is not a lot of light pollution that affects it. Excuse me.
So, this is really interesting. So, would you when you share as you said, you would be sharing some links for students to know about, learn more about and know about these different agencies, activities where they can be a part of and they learn. So if you could also share something about these kind of issues, concerns that are there, because I always feel that students who would be interested not just in space law but anything related to space out there, these would be they should be aware of what are the pressing concerns, what are the issues that they could sort of research on, come up with solutions, because, or even, see how the research is going on, or what are people or agencies doing, in terms to address these kind of issues. So maybe if you could share also those things, then it will really help the students. And I'm sorry, this is really, really the last question. Any last, your last words that you would like to share with students, because as I told you, some of them have taken the time off from school today to listen to this because they're super interested in space law. So is there anything that you would like to share with them, any suggestions, any advice, so that they can start? Most of them are in grade 10 or grade 11. So what could they do right now apart from reading up these things, being a part of these agencies or these initiatives that are there? What else can they do?
Um, so, firstly, for them, space law is a very interesting aspect, but it comes with its own uh, beauty of problems as well, is what I call it. You need to know, how much ever hate you have for maths and engineering, you need to know a bit of it, so you cannot have a way out. What I would suggest them is keep your perspectives very open, your outlook towards space very open. Do not restrict that, okay, I have to be a space lawyer. All these other aspects are very irrelevant. You only understand relevance of it as you have a variety of missions coming up to you. So I think, um, if you are very clear that you want to do law, then you need to prep to enter into a law school, to enter into a good law school. Secondly, along with that, your preparations also have I mean, for space lawyer, is to early on be a part of all of these discussions, conversations. You can also be a part of working groups. That's essentially after you are done with your undergrad, that you can be a part of these working groups. However, like I said, there are conferences that happen. There are, I mean, seminars that happen. There's a lot happening even in the UAE. So before you agree on to becoming a space lawyer, talk to people who've done this, communicate. So I think explore the idea of what space law is instead of directly jumping onto a conclusion that you want to be one. But I totally encourage uh, for individuals to be a part of this beautiful uh, area of exploration. Where else do you get the chance to work on cool technology? Uh, so yeah, it's a to be a part of all of these conferences, talking to people who've already done this, um, reading on space law, and of course, if you're interested, then you do your masters or you also do other programs. This ISU, International Space University, which offers you three different courses. You can take a look at on their website. Doing that also can help you understand the space industry as a whole in a period of 3 to 6 months.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Tanushri. It was really exciting. And for me, I think so. There's so much of learning that's happened and such interesting ways of knowing that, okay, this could also be a problem, that could also be a problem, or this is where it's all going. So it was really very fascinating. And so thank you for giving us your time today for our World Space Week speaker series, which is organized by Mission Shakti Sat and Mentormind. So, and I do think there would be a lot of students reaching out to you for their questions. So, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all the attendees from different parts of the world who've joined us, who've taken out time from their very busy schedules to support us in, spreading this ideas about different ways in which space is such an integral part of our everyday lives, and not only about spacecraft and astronauts, all the ways in which space is a part of our lives on Earth. So, thank you for joining us in this speaker series, and hope you have a great day, great afternoon, great evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, and thank you once again, Tanushri, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time and I think I spoke a lot. But for people who have a lot of queries, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, or I can also share my email ID with Kanchi. You can reach out to her. But once again, thank you so much, Mission Shakti Sat and even Mentormind and all the attendees. So I look forward to your queries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.